Oh my goodness. All right.
And if you down there next Sunday around lunchtime, I'll look us up here.
All right, thanks.
I've ordered chickens and ham to feed the law officers.
And the problem is sort of a unique problem in that we have got authorization to go ahead and take some profits in our fixed income account. Prior to this, we had taken maybe $1 or $2 million a year in our common stock activity. And this will be the first year that we'll take a substantial sum in our fixed income account.
That substantial sum could amount to $16 million on a $90 million investment. Bronner says he can't ever remember the retirement systems making such a huge profit. The problem is what to do with the money, keep it invested or sell the Government National Mortgage Association bonds. Members of the Teachers and Employees Retirement System Boards voted to liquidate and try to use the money for cost of living increases for retired teachers and state employees. The raises were approved by the legislature this session on the condition that Retirement Systems has the money. Now that the money will be available, the Teachers Board and the Employees Board must vote separately on whether to approve the raises. The Alabama Education Association's Executive Director, Paul Hubbard, says there could be one problem with the raises. He says they could set a dangerous precedent if legislators don't realize the unusual profits make it a one-time only increase. He says many legislators already are under the illusion that Retirement Systems of Alabama has too much money, and he's afraid legislators will continue to increase appropriations even if the money isn't available. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Oh, yes.
Sources in the governor's office say the first year and a half has been a learning experience for the governor and his staff. When the staff was originally organized, various slots were created and then people hired to fill them. But State Administrative Officer Bob Davis says the system had imperfections that created confusion at times. Now that the legislative session is over, efforts are being concentrated on making changes that reportedly will make operations flow more smoothly.
We're making folks more general in nature rather than having specified field that they will work in, say health or development or whatnot. We're going to try to get everybody to do general work so that all things will be handled and very few things would fall through the crack.
At the same time, Davis says they can streamline the staff by not replacing all of the personnel who leave through natural attrition.
Of course, in doing it this way, we are going to come out better as far as money is concerned. We will save some money.
Davis says the governor is very pleased with the talent in his staff and thinks each of them can handle additional responsibilities and at the same time coordinate their actions more efficiently. Davis says this will make it easier for the governor's office to get the job done. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Well, I would like to think so, but I have some real concerns about the unemployment rates and the realistic figures, and I'm just not comfortable with saying that we are going to be in this position in the months in the future. Traditionally, this has been a good month throughout the past years. The records would indicate that financially we've never had many problems during the month of May. Generally, the summer months are slow receipt months. The revenue doesn't come in at the rate as it would in the other months, and we just aren't comfortable yet with the projected revenues.
The County Restitution Center Director Anthony Lee says he's waiting for the okay from Circuit Court Judge Randall Thomas and for the judge to name the prisoners who are eligible to live here. Lee says about 15 prisoners will move in this week. That will eventually increase to 25 male inmates. The minimum custody prisoners who will sleep and eat here will go to their jobs in the community during the day and return here at night. Part of the prisoner's gross income is allocated for room and board. He must also pay some restitution to victims of his crime, attorney's fees, and court costs. The inmate is expected to eventually be placed on normal probation. The city helped the county to renovate the large house to meet fire code and health standards. The center is staffed 24 hours a day by home parents working split shifts of 8 hours each. A $100,000 contract was awarded by the county in February to underwrite the cost of the center for a one-year trial basis. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
6 from North Alabama, and 12 Methodist laypersons, and 12 persons at their request in coming to you today. Appropriation for Huntington. This is a request for an increase. It was a reminder that our entwined application for their time and for their commitment and for their interest and for their preparation that we might have this time to talk with you about Huntington. The University of Georgia, and finished his career as professor of English. As you attempt to answer questions about the enrollment, about the finances of college. First of all, Huntington, as the bishop has said in his letter, so
Mayor Emery Fulmer told council members that only those residents who are currently listed on the city's tax rolls will be subject to the city property taxes. He explained that the residents of the newly annexed areas won't be taxed until they receive all city services. The ordinance was unanimously adopted. New business confronting the council centered around the amending of one schedule of the city's permit fees. Currently, the city charges $2 for checking and certifying the placement of portable signs within Montgomery. The council has been asked to increase the fee to $20. That's because City Clerk John Baker says it now costs just under $21 to have an electrician check the signs and inspect the site for fire hazards. Councilman Joe Reed asked for a public hearing on the matter. It'll be held during the June 10th council meeting. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News, reporting from City Hall. The Dallas Christian School's graduation class of 3 was perhaps overshadowed by the presence of commencement speaker Anita Bryant Green. She sat quietly as the valedictorian spoke of unity within the family, God, and America. It was Miss Bryant's first public appearance since announcing 4 days ago her plans to divorce her husband, Bob Green. Mrs. Bryant says many ills in the education process have made young people forget godly principles. Citing herself as an example, she said parents must take a firm stand on what they believe and in the education of their children. Amid many amens from the audience, Mrs. Bryant spoke about her crusade against homosexuality. She says she was against legalizing a lifestyle that was contrary to biblical teachings, and she told the audience she's had to sacrifice much for her beliefs. The words family and togetherness were scattered throughout Mrs. Bryant's speech. There was at least one clue to the personal trauma Mrs. Bryant is experiencing. She said the country has been deprived of the leadership in men. The key in America, she says, are the women. It is they, Mrs. Bryant said, who must teach the children God's principle. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
And so the president comes out today and says, well, we're fine, we're going to add $1 billion to the O&M account so we can pay the young people to stay in the service. just like all of a sudden he just learned something new. Well, we've been trying to get this done for quite some time now. And the mid-career people are getting out in droves, and you can't replace them. I mean, people who have been trained now to be aircraft mechanics or to be engineers on a ship or whatever, that have put in 5, 6, 10, 12 years, and they look ahead and they say, hey, there's no future here. I'm not making as much money as that guy punching the cash register at McDonald's, and he goes home every night. I'm out here, I can't even get a beer. So they're getting out. And so we've got to do something to boost our defense posture in this country. And hopefully we will do it, but it's not with the help of this administration, it's because of this administration. And we have a pretty tough fight.
The Dallas Christian School's graduating class of 3 was somewhat overshadowed by the commencement speaker, Anita Bryant. It was Miss Bryant's first public appearance since announcing 4 days earlier her plans to divorce husband-manager Bob Green. She sat quietly as the class valedictorian spoke of unity within the family, God, and America. Then the crowd gave Miss Bryant a standing ovation when she was introduced as the epitome of Christian character. Miss Bryant says many ills in the world today have made young people forget godly principles. She says those principles must be re-emphasized in a child's learning process.
I believe the answer to a lot of the ills in our nation, it's the education of our young people. Well, I understand many of you make great sacrifice to send your children to a Christian school, but you hang in there because the hard work and the sacrifices that you are making will pay off in the long run.
Miss Bryant also spoke of her crusade against homosexuality, saying she's against legalizing a lifestyle that's contrary to biblical teachings. And she told the audience she's had to sacrifice much for her beliefs. There was at least one clue to the personal trauma Miss Bryant is experiencing. She said the country has been deprived of the necessary leadership by men. She says women are the key in America. It is the women, she says, who must teach the children God's principle. Sydney Kahara, WSFA TV News, Selma.
We got a lot of ladies to sign up, and what we had is kind of like a football draft. We had a combination of A, B, and C players. And from this...
Held a draft, huh?
That's right. First time for ladies tennis we held a draft. So what we have here, we have 9 teams of 10 teams with 9 people on each team. They all went out and got a sponsor from different companies around the city. What we've done here, we've played 9 dual matches, and at the end of the 9 dual matches, we've just had a tournament. So at the end of the day, we'll have a winning team will be our first Ladies League champion of the city. So any men, like from country clubs, apartment complexes, get together with your buddies. You need 7 people on a team. You need to get in touch with me by June 2nd with your rosters, and you need a sponsor. And this will be starting June 9th on Monday nights at 6:30.
Down the road, would you envision all-star teams playing other cities?
This is what this is all about. In the other cities, they have what you call a USTA league, which is divided up in A leagues, B leagues, and C leagues. What we're having to do this first time, this pilot series league right here, is to combine all our A's, B's, and C's together. It's the only way to do it here in Montgomery to get it started off. Down the road, that's what we're looking for.
A new housing authority bill to oversee the issuance of up to $150 million in low-interest loans for low and moderate-income families to purchase houses is now law. The governor's signature on another bill sets up an agriculture authority to provide farmers with low-interest loans to purchase equipment and land.
I want to preface, it is not government endorsed.
It's strictly a tax-free bond in the same sense that industrial bonds are, moved over to support two major industries, the agriculture industry and the home building industry.
The governor says the new crime-related laws he signed are great tools for Alabama's law enforcement people. A Controlled Substance Act creates stiffer penalties in illegal drug traffic. Another bill requires criminals to make restitution to crime victims. A third new law authorizes Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans to impanel dual grand juries, one to handle street crimes, the other to take care of highly technical investigations. Governor James is expected to make public tomorrow what other bills he plans to sign or pocket veto. The state's education and general fund budgets have not been signed. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Commissioner Nunn says the city dog ordinance is for the benefit of both the dog and its owner, and at the same time helps protect the public. W.G. Raby, Chief Animal Control Officer, says his department picks up an average of 225 dogs every month.
An animal must be confined either behind a fence or in a dog pen, or else it has to be on a leash under adult control. It cannot be allowed to roam of its own free will.
Officer Raby says there are stiff penalties for dog owners who don't obey the leash law.
Well, if we pick it up, immediately if you come to claim it, it's a $5 reclaim fee, $2 a day board. If the problem persists, we take action through the municipal courts, and that can range anywhere from $10 to $500 or up to 6 months in jail.
If you have a problem with an unsupervised dog in your neighborhood, you can report it by calling the Montgomery Police Department at 832-4400 and asking for the Animal Control Unit. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Mayor of the City of Montgomery, I accept this in the name of the City of Montgomery. And a group of men gathered here today will
The Montgomery Police Department and the state troopers are two of several law enforcement agencies the Saudi Arabians will observe. Their training involves 2.5 years in this country, 8 months in English class, the remainder in police and traffic training. Most of their time is spent at the Institute of Police Traffic Management at the University of North Florida, but from time to time they visit other law enforcement agencies to watch those operations. The group's advisor, Russell Aaron, says last week the students observed the Montgomery Police Department's traffic division. This week they're watching Alabama state troopers at the way stations, in the driver's license division, and in the Trooper Academy in Selma. Aaron says they're also riding with the troopers to see how they handle traffic and accident investigations.
At the end of this week, the students will go back to the University of North Florida for more months of classroom training before going out again to visit other law enforcement agencies. After all training is complete in this country, they will go back to Saudi Arabia and start their own highway patrol. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Ms. Carter campaigned hard for the re-election of her husband. The First Lady says the president has made some difficult decisions, referring to the aborted rescue attempt of the 53 American hostages in Iran and to the president's commitment to boycott the Olympic Games in protest of the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. With the country slowly sliding into an apparent recession, Mrs. Carter defended the president's handling of the economy.
The steps that he's taken to combat inflation, and very difficult decisions in a campaign year, but he made them. And now we see interest rates turning down. Inflation, we expect to come down by the end of the summer and considerably by the end of the year.
The First Lady says Mr. Carter is very much in charge in Washington, D.C. She confidently stated there is no doubt that President Carter will be the Democratic nominee. But apparently there's enough of a contest with Senator Edward Kennedy to keep the First Lady on the campaign trail, a campaign that later took Mrs. Carter to Biloxi, Mississippi on board Air Force One. Once in Biloxi, another fundraising event, this time a $100 a plate luncheon. But the trail winds on. Next stop, New Orleans, Louisiana. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Simply because I disagree with Judge Sankey does not make Judge Sankey, or I'm not trying to prejudge the man. I'm just simply trying to explain to the public that no inferior court judge has the right to deprive a grand jury of listening to a case. And they will hear all the evidence concerning all of the offenses by every allegation against any person concerning it, and they will resolve the matter. And I think that should, simply because I disagree with Judge Sankey does not make Judge Sankey wrong. All I'm saying is, as a general...
It was like it was, might have lost an engine or something. It was weaving real bad, just, you know, just like this, and it just turned over and come down, just like that.
Dickinson assured the graduates that Congress is concerned about the country's position as a world power, and he says he was encouraged when he first heard that the U.S. is increasing by 5% the number of real dollars to be spent on defense.
And that sounded good, because I know the difference in the level of effort of the Soviets versus what we have. And then when the witnesses come before the committee, though, and you start saying, well, now, what are we going to buy with this? We find that we're not buying more tanks, we're buying fewer.
But Dickinson says the administration is finally getting the message that the U.S. must start catching up to Soviet arms achievements. He says Americans have been short-sighted and have shortchanged the military, but he's optimistic that defense will receive more emphasis. The men who received diplomas were from all branches of the U.S. service, and there were 16 foreign officers who graduated from the 10-month program. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Hamidi Al-Harbi, Royal Sergeant.
Many manufacturers are telling us that they are coming here not just to escape from labor unions or whatever, but to get closer to their customers. As we get more and more people down here and more jobs, of course, it becomes a marketplace more so than it has in the past. Available labor supply. In virtually every case we've ever known of, the southern worker produces more goods than his northern counterpart. The Japanese don't believe that yet, but they admit that at their plant in Dothan, there's very little difference between the workers there and the ones in Japan. Superior work ethic. Not only is our labor abundant and productive, it is largely unspoiled and less likely to cause strife and stoppages because of petty grievances.
A resident of Arrowhead Court in Montgomery, Chrisman has won trap shooting championship tournaments in 3 states. He won the Texas State Singles title in 1978, the same year he took the Alabama Doubles Championship. Chrisman tied for the Georgia State Singles title in 1972 and won it outright this past April, along with the Georgia Doubles Championship. The 38-year-old father of 3 children, Chrisman is a marketing manager for IBM, and he feels trap shooting is a nice diversion from the office.
Any sport is a diversion from what people do most of their waking hours, and that, of course, is to work at their careers. And trap shooting affords me an opportunity. It's a sport which I've developed and which I've developed some skill at, which allows me some time away from the office and to compete in an environment against people from all over the country.
Chrisman says trap is totally void of excuses. He says if you miss a target, the fault lies with you, the shooter. It's simple. You pull the trigger at the wrong time. Dave Cody, WSFA TV Sports.
Admiral Denton says many unexpected world events have made him mad enough to run for the Senate. Denton says the American people are ready to hear it like it is. He feels his stand on the issues will give the voters of all parties a clear choice in November.
My priorities are these. First, a national security structure, strategic and conventional. Second to none, a structure of moral as well as physical strength, which is conducive to deterrence, peace, not war. A realistic bipartisan foreign policy. Third, a balanced budget and tax cuts sufficient to revitalize the economy, create new jobs, and fight inflation.
Denton was somewhat critical of President Carter's handling of the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, saying the president hasn't made it a big enough issue, and Denton feels an immediate air and naval blockade would have turned the Iranian hostage situation around. He says America must begin playing a tougher game abroad. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
The Commission's Executive Director, Melvin Cooper, says 45 mayors and 485 city council members and a few judges have failed to file statements of economic interest as required by law. He says the reports were due at the Commission's office a month ago. Among the reasons for non-compliance, according to Cooper, is that many of the mayors and councilmen say they aren't seeking re-election. But he says that doesn't relieve a person from complying with the law. Cooper says anyone who handles public money and makes over $15,000 a year comes under the ethics law. That also applies to some workers in higher education. Some 60 college administrators involved in school finances are affected. The Commission says academic deans, professors, and classroom teachers are excluded from the law. The Commission delayed action on a possible conflict of interest involving a Greene County Racing Commission member who was seeking a seat on the County Commission. An Attorney General opinion says there is no conflict of interest, but the Commission contends it's a potential violation of the ethics law. It's the Commission's opinion that members of the Governor's Commission on Physical Fitness are not exempt from the law because they make policy and handle public money. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Folsom said he'd ask Attorney General Charles Graddick to start legal action against companies owing the state fines for late M-form filings. Commissioner Folsom then said it appeared that over a 30-year period, the annual reports law was neglected by custom.
Many employees who were following this course of action were doing so without any awareness of any wrongdoing. Also, I would like to say that the companies who have operated under this action
have not been aware of any wrongdoing. They have been under the impression that this was the proper procedure.
Folsom also said his resolution banning PSC staff members from asking for or accepting free meals or drink from any company regulated by the PSC was short only one signature from being agreed to by all three commissioners. He said only PSC President Sanford hadn't signed it yet. If the resolution is adopted by the PSC, any employee violating it will be subject to disciplinary action. One PSC staffer said today, "The resolution is a good thing because," and I'm quoting now, "some PSC staffers eat their weight in free meals from utilities and other firms they are charged with regulating."
One reporter asked Commissioner Folsom if there were other customs that may be violating PSC regulations. The commissioner said that he would order his staff to check all of the codes pertaining to the PSC, and if there were violations, he would have them stopped. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Public Service Commission.
Nationally, cowboy hat sales are booming, and Montgomery is no exception. Western wear dealers here in town say sales have almost doubled since last summer, and many say they're having problems restocking their supply.
A lot of companies are not even able to take any orders right now, and they'll have to ship them in 1981.
Jewell says men and women of all age groups are wearing the hats. Because of the hot weather, he says many are wearing straw hats and decorating them with feathers. Jewell says traditionally Western wear was only worn by whites. He says now quite a few blacks are buying cowboy hats and wearing them to discos. Jewell predicts hat sales will reach its peak this coming fall and winter, then slack off within the next 2 to 3 years, but says a large number of people will probably continue to wear the hats even after the trend is gone. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
I really felt I could do it, and I got to the pool that night. The finals were that night, and I really felt I could win. But the winning was secondary now, because I thought I could win. I just wanted to break the record.
You knew at that time that the Olympics were out, did you?
Yes, sir. Matter of fact, that was the day that I found out that there was going to be no Olympics.
Did you feel a sense of urgency to swim a world record then, because of being denied the opportunity to do it at the Olympics?
I think a little bit. Deep inside, I wanted to kind of. It sounds a little rough, but I wanted to get revenge. You know, I wanted to win. I wanted to break that world record, because next to an Olympic gold medal, you know, that's the biggest thrill, you know, of pretty much any athlete's life. Goes on, you know. It was a great disappointment. I support the government, President Carter, the USOC. I support them all for making the decision. You know, naturally it hurt, but you know, like I said, life goes on. You can't dwindle on that. You know, I've got to move on to bigger and better things, and hopefully at our nationals, which are this summer at the middle of this,
after the Moscow Games?
A week after Moscow Games. Hopefully we'll just kind of tear them up there in our own mind.
Chief. Those of you who know General Gillum, those of you who don't, I'll acquaint you with his background. Of course, General Gillum, and for the Jack, do you have that figure? How about calling down there right now?
Permanently, the answer is no. I think no, it's more for 90. I believe almost every citizen in the city would agree with that. And I don't visualize any monumental changes or earth-shaking rearrangements. But you can always do a little better.
Mayor Emery Falmer chose Alvin Gillum to head the fire department and assist in finding a permanent fire chief and deputy chief. The top two positions in the fire department are open since Chief J.A. Odom and Deputy Chief Melvin Douglas retired recently. 9 firefighters have applied for each position, and Gillum will evaluate the applicants and make recommendations to the mayor. Gillum says Montgomery has a fine fire department, that he doesn't anticipate making any monumental changes, but there's always room for improvement. Gillum says he'll only be fire chief for a few weeks. Then the city will convene a personnel board to select 5 candidates. The mayor will choose the chief and deputy chief from those names. Meanwhile, Gillum told reporters, "I'm not here to mark time. I'm going to run the Montgomery Fire Department." Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
His background, of course, General Gillum.
Hypertension Conference 80 attracted medical and health personnel from across the state. The one-day conference focused on high blood pressure control within the working community. Occupational settings have always been naturals for bringing about high blood pressure problems. Seminar discussions centered on preventive education for the employee population as well as rural communities. High blood pressure can cause strokes, heart attacks, and kidney failure. But what's even more alarming, it's the #1 killer of blacks.
In Alabama, we have about 400,000 hypertensives, and we run a little higher rate than the rest of the nation, and that's because we have more low income, and it's found more in low income, and we have more blacks than a lot of states.
High blood pressure usually has no symptoms. The only way you know your blood pressure is high is to have it checked. Even though hypertension is a lifelong problem, proper treatment can control the silent killer. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
It does not require a doctor's certificate now for an elderly or handicapped person to vote. In the past, they were required to get a doctor's certificate, whereas anyone else just wrote in and said they were going to be out of town. And also, the new law doesn't require you to sign the ballot. And I think that's a good improvement over the laws of the state. Threw me and Humphrey out because he didn't have... I keep maybe 3 or 4 or 5 8 as far as voting is concerned.
Bullock County is the 3rd poorest county in the state, and county commission members say county residents really can't afford a newly imposed increase in sales tax to fund a new jail. As a result, the commission members are depending heavily on federal funds for the project. This morning, Commissioner John Waters, who recently went to Washington to check on possible federal funding, told the commission members the county might be eligible to receive between $600,000 and $3 million for its jail project, but only if the plan consists of a multi-purpose jail complex that would include city and county office space. Commission Chairman R.C. Huffman is encouraged by the possibility of receiving federal assistance, but he says local resources such as a tax redistribution may also be utilized. The Commission is following a formal schedule in its efforts to finalize the new jail plans. Part of the schedule includes a trip to Boulder, Colorado next week by Commission Chairman Huffman and Commission Attorney Lewis Rutland. They'll attend a National Institute of Corrections seminar. The NIC is assisting the Commission by providing free consultation on modern jail design and specifications. The Commission has set a May 1981 deadline to begin construction on the new facility if it receives the anticipated federal assistance. Dan Black, WSFA TV News, Union Springs.
And Captain Poppy from Saudi Arabia, congratulations. And Captain...
We indeed appreciate the work. On his right is Captain of the foreign officers. I'd like to give the opportunity for Major Kwanzaa to say just a...
I think all of you know that the Foreign Officers Program at Maxwell is a very...
appreciation. Fine work.
Captain Al-Misri, Captain Al-Anab...
Kwanzaa is Mr. President. He has served us well.
Judge William Gordon sentenced Johnny Danley to a total of 65 years in prison. That included 2 50-year sentences on the obscene materials charge to be served simultaneously and 15 years for the 3 molestation convictions. Dorothy Danley was sentenced to spend a total of 23 years in prison. She received 20 years for the obscene materials charges and 15 years on the 3 molestations convictions. Judge Gordon reduced that 15 years to 3 years behind bars, pending Mrs. Danley's receiving psychiatric treatment at Bryce State Hospital. The Danleys' attorney, Walter Chandler, says he'll appeal the court's decision, but in the meantime, bail has been set at $125,000 for Johnny Danley and $25,000 for his wife. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The Commission's executive director says the magnitude of off-campus instruction has been reduced, but the quality of what remains has been upgraded. John Porter says off-campus sites have been reduced 39%. Off-campus courses offered by institutions of higher learning are down 56%, while the number of off-campus students enrolled, says Porter, has been reduced 52%. He says there is a 55% reduction in the total off-campus credit hour production. Porter says funding for secondary level education is determined by regional averages in a per-student appropriation formula, and funding, as recommended by the Commission, will be done on an equitable basis. The Commission approved off-campus proposals for Troy State University at Dothan, Fort Rucker, Andalusia, and Eufaula. It approved a request to continue off-campus offerings at Patrick Henry Junior College in Monroeville for the summer in 14 mostly education courses. Advanced degree courses for the summer offered by Auburn University for Dothan were approved. The Commission will be the state-level guarantee for federal student loan programs. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
What's the latest now on the Olympic situation as far as financial problems? Are there some problems with the Moscow Games?
Yes, I think there are. First place, when we decided that the teams would not go, the deadline passed May 24th. Contributions from the corporate sector and also private contributions dropped way off. And it is a problem because much of the monies had been committed, and of course they'd already decided to pick the teams for all the various sports. The president encouraged this, so we're at a point right now where I think the United States Olympic Committee is going to need some funding from some source to balance the budget this year. We think that, of course, I think the public will respond to it, though, because they know the situation. It's one of those unusual circumstances which nobody can control.
What are the chances that some teams who have entered the Olympic Games may back out?
Well, I think probably there's some good chance they will. I think there's a lot of pressure being put on them now because they know that down deep probably they shouldn't be there. And I think the United States is going to have a lot of influence on it. And I think there's some governments right now putting pressure on their own Olympic committees to have them reverse. And I would imagine you'll see several that will not enter that have now said they'll enter.
Have you heard the latest on the Australian situation?
No, I haven't. I sure haven't. I've been out of town a lot, and I haven't really been in touch.
What about the effect on the 1984 games in L.A.? What kind of effect will a U.S. boycott have on that?
Well, they say it won't have any effect on it. We're keeping our fingers crossed, and I think we'll know more after the Olympics are over this year. But supposedly it shouldn't have too much effect, I think, if things go as we anticipate them.
The shooting occurred about 12:30 Saturday morning at the Ponderosa Club on Highway 143 in Millbrook. Dead at the scene was 40-year-old Walter Young of Millbrook. 2 others were wounded. Young died from 2 shots to the head area. According to police, Young was arguing with another Millbrook resident, 26-year-old Wayman Jackson.
There was a shooting, and the person left the scene and was caught in Cosford Road by the Prattville Police Department and detained, and he's now pending charges of criminal charges in Elmore County Jail.
Jackson suffered a gunshot wound to the wrist. He was not charged when apprehended. The case is still under investigation by the Millbrook Police. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News. More than 500 people came to the place where the legend began. It was the 7th annual Hank Williams Memorial Celebration. The home cooking, assorted thirst quenchers, and just a plain beautiful day made the celebration all the better. And if the music could be heard in heaven, Hank Williams would surely have been proud of the entertainment in his honor. Hank's fans aren't just from Alabama. They come from all parts of the country.
I was listening to the radio the night Hank Williams died, and I became interested from that point on, and that's been 28 years ago.
There seems to be no generation gap when it comes to Hank Williams music. Some of those in attendance were too young to remember the country music legend, but those who did just had to get involved. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
It was billed as an Own Your Own Business Expo. The company's representatives were trying to sell individual franchises and distributorships of their companies. Show organizer Donald Palladino says the average price ranges from $5,000 to $7,000. After you buy a franchise, Palladino says it's possible to make a great deal of money. He says it all depends on how aggressive you are. During this period of recession, many wonder if going into a business of their own is a good idea. Palladino says it is, and says owning a franchise or distributorship is advantageous to the little guy who's being laid off from big businesses.
Well, people that find themselves in a position of being out of work right now, the best way for them to make a living is to work for themselves. And we've assembled a number of companies that are looking for distributors and franchisees in this particular area to represent them in the Montgomery area. And it enables a person with a minimal amount of money to go into a business of his own. And that's basically what we're doing here this weekend.
Palladino says over 300 people have been by to see the exhibits this weekend. He says some have come by to get their own business ideas, but says quite a few have been signing up. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
year.
Kendrick says his experience with the Attorney General's office is solid background for the job he's now decided to seek. Kendrick spent a number of years in the Attorney General's office developing a Consumer Utility Act that deals directly with intervening in rate cases on behalf of the state's consumers. Consumers that he says haven't been fairly represented before the Public Service Commission. Kendrick says Alabamians are paying much more than they should in utility costs, partly because of what he calls inexperience on the part of the commissioners and because of corruption in the department, like the coal racketeering trial now underway in Birmingham and the sex favors trial involving former PSC Director Ralph McLemore.
Really, I suppose, need to be fairly circumspect in what I say that might possibly in any way affect the case that's now in litigation, but we uncovered some information that's not yet been the subject of the prosecution that I think probably should be looked into further.
Kendrick says he'd like to implement many changes if elected, changes in rate determinations and policy enforcement. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Been granted a 208.
The FEC's latest report reveals what may be the key to a presidential win: more money. FEC figures show that the 5 Republican presidential candidates who spent money in the state paid out 5 times the amount of funds used by the 3 Democratic candidates. Nationwide, that trend is the same. Republicans are outspending the Democratic challengers. In this breakdown by parties, President Carter leads the Democratic spending in Alabama. Senator Ted Kennedy and Governor Jerry Brown are far behind. That trend also continues in their spending nationwide. On the Republican front, George Bush, recent Republican dropout, spent close to 4 times more in Alabama than all Democratic candidates put together. He was also the biggest spender of all candidates campaigning in the state. Ronald Reagan also wielded a bit of money clout here. 2 other now-defunct Republican presidential hopefuls, John Anderson and John Connally, reportedly spent no money in the state. The Republican trend of spending more extends outside Alabama. Governor Reagan is the only Republican candidate still in the race. He's almost assured of his party's nomination. And if money is a key to success, Reagan's got a good chance. So far, the former governor of California has spent around $18 million in his bid to become the nation's 40th president.
The chairman of Alabama's Republican Executive Committee, Phil Harris, says there's a lot of reasons for his party outspending the Democrats. Besides having more candidates, Harris says the average voter's preference is also changing because of negative feeling toward the current leadership. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
General Daniel Chappie James was a graduate of Tuskegee Institute. This room in the Institute's library is filled with plaques and memorabilia honoring him for his military service and concern for people. So Tuskegee administrators think it's fitting that his name be given to a health education center designed to teach health care and physical fitness. This is the site proposed for the Daniel Chappie James Memorial Health Education Center. Administrators estimate the center will cost about $12 million to build. But the Senate bill asks for only half that amount. Yet in these hard budget times, that $6 million may be hard to come by.
It's difficult, but Tuskegee, we've always experienced difficulties, so this is no exception. If we have enough people writing in and calling and bringing influence to bear, we think it is possible, and we're hopeful.
Dr. Blackwell says so far about 15,000 Tuskegee alumni and other supporters have written letters asking senators to support the appropriation. She hopes they'll break ground on the Memorial Health Center in 1981. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Tuskegee.
I've learned that the FBI is investigating allegations of mail fraud involving tens of thousands of dollars that may have been stolen by at least 15 Prattville City officials and present and former employees. FBI agents have already questioned a number of Prattville City employees about the alleged thefts through illegally cashed checks, illegal auto repairs, and other misuse of taxpayers' funds here in Prattville. Mayor C.M. Mac Gray, his secretary Jeanette Wingert, and City Councilman Bill Godwin are among those being investigated. Investigators are checking into allegations that Gray, a 20-year veteran of the mayor's office in Prattville, used city gas in his private car and boat. State and federal officers are also checking into charges that Gray, who recently announced that he won't seek re-election, drove a City of Prattville car on a personal trip to Red Bay, Michigan several years ago. Investigators have been told that Gray then ordered a city employee flown to Red Bay to drive the city car back to town after Gray was hospitalized there. Mayor Gray reportedly flew back to Prattville after he got out of the hospital. Investigators have been told that Gray regularly signed blank checks or checks made out to cash. These checks allegedly later turned up at local stores. Probers have been told that Gray was urged to sign the blanks by his secretary of many years, Mrs. Jeanette Wingert, who was fired several weeks ago after an Ethics Commission report charged she allegedly misused thousands in city funds. Mrs. Wingert had worked for the city of Prattville for 18 years. She is alleged to have purchased appliances, expensive clothing, and other luxury items with taxpayers' funds by using checks signed by Mayor Gray. Another of the 15 under investigation by the state and federal governments is City Councilman Bill Godwin, who owns a business and is alleged to have illegally used his political office to get business for his Prattville hardware store. Investigators have also learned of another alleged scheme to steal Prattville citizens' money. They've been told of a city license scheme allegedly involving former city clerk Donald Kelly and his assistant Linda Williams. This is the way it supposedly worked. An out-of-state corporation doing business in Prattville would mail city license fees. Kelly and Williams would mail a receipt for the full amount to the firm, but the receipt placed in city records would be for less than the actual fee was. We were told of one situation where the license cost $4,750. The company paid that, got a receipt for that amount, but only $1,751 ended up in the city's treasury, while $3,000 was allegedly kept by Kelly and Williams. They are also being investigated by the FBI for mail fraud in connection with the charges. Sources close to the probe here in Prattville say a number of other charges are involved, but they won't say what those charges are or who they may involve. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, Prattville, Alabama.
The state has only $70 million federal dollars to divide among cities building water treatment plants. That's down from $101 million promised before President Carter's budget cuts. So now the Water Improvement Commission has had to drop some projects from its list of fundable facilities. Huntsville Public Works Director C.D. Black came to protest the revised list, which excludes Huntsville's Western Area Treatment Plant. Black says the commission's method of determining the needs list is unfair and inaccurate. He says some areas of the state, such as Jefferson County, receive a disproportionate share of funds. He says Jefferson County population figures are exaggerated, while the Huntsville population is underestimated. The only other person to speak at the hearing was a representative of the Jefferson County Public Works Department. She, too, complained about the commission's methods for setting priorities, only she says more Jefferson County projects should be funded. The Water Improvement Commission must decide who gets the federal funds by July 15th. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Some 1,200 future farmers are here to participate in agriculture contest and hear the latest from dignitaries of Alabama's farming industry. Preparing for progress is the theme of the three-day convention. But while high costs and low profits don't make for a good farming future, one FFA official says there's no reason to tell the future farmers that the agriculture outlook is glum, because it isn't.
We try to continue to motivate them, even though
contrary to what a lot of people think, agribusiness and agriculture is not a declining industry. People have to eat. And we feel like that in the 80s that agriculture will be more important than it's ever been before.
Hollis
Besides
feels the
that, we
government
don't only
used